All right, good morning, everyone. For those of you who are just joining us, if you have any tech support issues this morning, there's an account called Tech Support that you can send a direct message to, or you can send me an email. My email address is amycbogey@durhamliteracy.org, which should have been included in the email that you received with the Zoom link for today. We're going to go ahead and get started. I will turn things over here to Lizzie Ellis Furlong, our Executive Director.
Good morning, everyone. I am so delighted to see you here today, and I'm very grateful to you for making the Durham Literacy Center a priority this morning. I know your time is valuable, so it really means a lot to us that you joined us today on Zoom. This is the 14th annual Leaders in Literacy Breakfast and the second ever virtual event. Today, we celebrate the determination, strength, and resilience of our adult learners as they've navigated such difficult challenges through the COVID-19 pandemic. We also recognize and celebrate the commitment of our staff and volunteers as we work together to help our students overcome monumental barriers and continue learning. Now, today, we start and we all together move forward with optimism and anticipation for life after the pandemic. I want to take a moment to thank all of our sponsors, many of which were in the pre-program PowerPoint, and given us a very special acknowledgement to our first ever professor level sponsors. These sponsors are the Forest at Duke and the Bart Ehrman blog. And so we're very grateful for their leadership gifts in support of this year's breakfast, virtual breakfast. Many thanks to the Forest at Duke and the Bart Ehrman blog and other generous sponsors. We're over halfway to our goal of $65,000 for this particular campaign. You can help us getting there by donating now at Durham Literacy, www.durhamliteracy.org/donate. So a lot has happened in the last year since we saw you all. As the pandemic hit last March 2020, we quickly closed our doors and pivoted to 100% remote instruction. At first, less than 30% of our adult learners were able to get online and continue at that time. We worked very hard, and I'll tell you more about what we did in a moment. And at this point, about 65% of our students have been able to continue in the remote environment. We accomplished this by utilizing new online learning platforms and assessments, establishing a tech lending library with the financial support from many of you and grants from Duke and the United Way. We doubled down on our efforts to provide digital literacy instruction with Duke's North Carolina Literacy Corps AmeriCorps program and many other partners. We retrained our volunteer tutors, many of you who are here today, to teach using the online tools, old-fashioned printed lessons, and phone meetings, and many, many other resourceful workarounds. We responded to the pandemic also by making help available in our parking lot while the building is closed. We've served and we continue to serve as a trusted resource of health literacy and public health information for our students. We've distributed 2,500 masks and counting, provided free from Durham County and the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. We've given out thousands of dollars in gift cards through our partnership with Porch Durham. We've helped students connect to vital resources, including housing, employment, food assistance, and many other supports, helping students get vaccinated and more. Looking forward, we're planning to reopen for in-person instruction this fall, and we're preparing to provide a hybrid learning model with both in-person and remote learning options for our students, incorporating online tools and digital literacy into our curricula for the long term. We're expanding and improving our college and career readiness services to help students prepare for the next stage of their lives. We're continuing to support our students as they recover from the COVID-19 crisis, And in the coming years, it's expected that the need for our programs will increase significantly. For many of us, the pandemic is bringing about change and a reevaluation of our life goals. This is no different for our students. And we're thinking strategically so we can be ready to support them. Also, unfortunately, the many high school students have dropped out during the pandemic, and those numbers are expected to grow. So we are working with our partners to be ready strategically to serve those folks when they need our services. So I would say we invite you to join us as we look to the future and build on our many successes to improve outcomes for adults and young people in Durham. We need you more than ever, and we're very grateful. Before we move on to our panel discussion, I want to thank our teacher level sponsors, the Duke Office of Durham and Community Affairs and Truist Bank, for their continued sponsorship and partnership. Now, I'm excited to hear our panelists this morning. So I want to give a little introduction to get us ready. It seems overly simplistic to say that the internet is a necessity in today's world. Yet, according to the state's broadband task force, at least 1.1 million North Carolinians lack adequate internet access, equipment, and skills to function effectively in this digital environment. This so-called digital divide is largely based on socioeconomic status. Clearly, the COVID-19 pandemic revealed these inequities. Last spring, it was confirmed that the majority of DLC students lacked what they needed to engage online, not only to continue their education, but in nearly every other critical area, such as supporting their children's schooling, accessing community and government services, getting accurate health information and education, managing their own healthcare and those of that of their family, applying for jobs or unemployment insurance, and so much more. I'm excited to have the opportunity to dig into this digital divide and learn more about these complex issues and hear about hopeful, innovative community responses to this issue. Now I'm going to introduce Gwen Weaver, our panel moderator. In 2017, I was introduced to Gwen Weaver by Sandra Stein, an old friend and colleague of Mary Cito, the first executive director of the Durham Literacy Center. Sandra's message said, "I'm writing to introduce you to Gwen Weaver, a wonderful woman I used to work with in DC who's just moved here. Gwen is an ITS expert and used to work in the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. Lucky for us, Gwen joined our board of directors, and she is really providing incredible leadership, particularly around digital inclusion and digital equity, but in many other areas as well. She also serves on the board of the National Coalition for Literacy, works with me in leadership at Digital Durham, and acts as an advisor to the North Carolina Digital Equity and Inclusion Collaborative. Welcome, Gwen.
Thank you, Lizzie. Thanks for that introduction. Good morning, everybody. I am Gwen Weaver, the person that Lizzie just introduced, and I am going to be the moderator for our panel. So first, I just want to give you a couple words about each of our panelists, and then we'll go into the discussion itself. So Kweli, Rashid Henry is the Racial Equity Officer for Durham County Government. In this inaugural role, she works to advance racial equity by upholding principles of equity across all facets of local government. And we're very happy to have her on our panel this morning. You can read everyone's full bio on our website. I'm just giving you the highlights here. Seth Irvin is visiting with us this morning from Charlotte. He is the Chief Innovation Officer for the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library, and he leads the innovation activities for the library. In this role, he's seeking to pioneer new avenues for the library to remain essential within the digital information ecosystem of the Charlotte community. He also serves as the current convener of the Charlotte Digital Inclusion Alliance, which is a volunteer coalition of nonprofits committed to eliminating the digital divide in in Mecklenburg County. And then we have Amy Huffman, whom I am really happy to introduce. Amy and I have been colleagues for quite a while in the digital inclusion world. Amy is a public servant, systems thinker, innovative policy expert, and a storyteller with a passion for closing the digital divide and ensuring that all Americans can thrive in the 21st century's digital world. Amy is currently serving as the policy director for the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. But prior to that, she served with the state of North Carolina as the first digital inclusion and policy manager for the State Broadband Infrastructure Office. So we're really pleased to have this group of experts this morning. And so now we'd like to start sharing with you, all of us, our passion for digital inclusion and equity. Next slide. The digital divide. I would say that Lizzie has already pretty much explained how the digital divide has impacted our students, but as we know, in the past year, it has impacted almost everybody. Because in the 21st century, access to and the ability to use both information and telecommunications technology has become essential to all aspects of life, from things like education to even the most mundane activities, such as just shopping or riding a bus. So what we want to do today is talk about digital equity and inclusion. Next slide. Digital inclusion is the umbrella activity. And as you can see, it's what those of us who are working in this area, feel is really important for everyone. The components of this include affordable, robust broadband internet service, internet-enabled devices that meet the needs of the user, access to digital literacy training, qualified technical support, and applications and online content designed to enable and encourage self-sufficiency, participation, and collaboration. And we want this digital inclusion to occur so that there will be what we call digital equity. Next slide. And that is the overall goal of the effort to dispel the digital divide. Digital inclusion gives individuals and communities an entree into full participation and helps to level the playing field for everyone. So on that note, I'd like to ask my panel, how do you think the pandemic has affected the digital divide? We can start with, shall we start with Kweli?
Hi, good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie, for this opportunity. So I think in terms of equity, the digital divide and the pandemic have kind of laid to bear the need for us to focus on equity and use that lens in everything that we do, right? So in coming to Durham County and thinking about the government's role in advancing equity and racial equity in particular, we've had to step back and really think about the disproportionality that exists across systems and really think about what it will take to ensure that everyone has the same opportunity to achieve optimal life outcomes, right? So that we can narrow those gaps and not see those disproportionalities. And I think the pandemic has kind of laid to bear other issues that have been bubbling up for quite some time. And we've heard a lot about the twindemics, right? The demands for racial justice that happened this time last year in light of George Floyd's killing. And so there's been an ongoing struggle to kind of grapple with racism in this country and to think about the opportunity for a racial reckoning that we've kind of come around to. And so I think that the digital divide and questions around digital equity relate to our holistic view of equity in general and how we need to have an imperative to achieve equity, to right historic wrongs, level the playing field, and think about how racism is really that system that structures the opportunity and assigns value based on how someone looks. And that comes from Dr. Kamara Jones, her definition, who's the past president of the American Public Health Association. So all of these intersections are extremely important to advancing digital equity and addressing the digital divide. And I think that this is a tremendous opportunity that we have to really examine things in a holistic way.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. So, Seth, would you like to give us the perspective of not
Sure.
just of Charlotte, but of, the same kind of community, I guess. Yeah.
Sure. I would just echo what Quayle said. I think that the digital divide is systemic, it is complex, and it follows the same trend lines that we see in Charlotte around, kind of historic segregation, unfortunately. So in the Charlotte context, in 2015, there was a study that came out from Rashid Henry about upward mobility, and Charlotte was ranked last out of the last, and like the whole community pretty much swooned. Like, what does this mean? So the end result of that study said that a child born in poverty is more likely to stay in poverty, and unfortunately, Charlotte was the best of the worst outcomes in that regard. And so, so there's been a huge conversation over in Charlotte about economic mobility, and I think the pandemic has shown that the digital divide is a huge contributing factor to that. And so a lot of times when people talk about the digital economy, I like to push back with a friendly smile and say, there is no digital economy. There's just the economy. And the pandemic has shown that. Like, we're having a conference right now or a digital breakfast because we have the ability to. So the economy, participating in democracy, having a network and maintaining it, all of these things are just the baseline of what of how societies function right now. And so, it's been a pleasure to kind of be in Charlotte and kind of have that conversation on behalf of the library, but also the Charlotte Digital Inclusion Alliance to kind of help people. It's interesting to see people who are like waking up to this as an issue and say, welcome to the party. We've been here a long time. We're glad to have you. So I hope, Gwen, that was kind of all over the place, but that's my answer.
No, but thank you. And it wasn't all over the place. It was right on point. So thank you. So Amy, do you want to give us kind of the higher level overview? I know you've got both state level and national level perspectives on this.
Sure. And good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. And I actually live in Durham. So this is Durham behind me. And I love being with fellow Durhamites. So yeah, the thing is that the internet has the potential to be the great equalizer, right? It has the potential to rectify the systemic wrongs that have been born and, entrenched in our society over the centuries. And yet, as we just heard, unfortunately, they're not doing that, right? The internet is not doing that right now because of the digital divide. It's actually, making things worse, like, to be blunt, right? Because the digital divide is impacting those who have been systemically oppressed in different ways, right? And that's here in Durham, that's across the state, and that's across the country, right? So this is a national trend. But in terms of how the pandemic affected the digital divide, what I'll say is it didn't actually affect it, right? The digital divide was here for decades, long before the pandemic. It just brought it to light in a new way. The analogy I've used is that I felt a little bit like Chicken Little before the pandemic. I was running around the state talking to whoever would listen to me about why this digital divide thing was bad and why it was important to address, why we needed to implement digital inclusion and digital equity policies, programs, and tools to close it, why we couldn't just focus on access, why we had access to internet and communities. We had to focus on making sure people had the skills and computers and device and can afford the internet in meaningful ways, why we had to do both at the same time. And I kept talking about, if we don't do this, we're going to see long-term impacts. If we don't do this, it's going to have these negative repercussions for generations to come. And then the sky fell. And it fell immediately and extremely hard. And has, what we'll get into in a minute, given us many opportunities to rectify these wrongs that have been, that we see right now in our society. So in a way, it's presented opportunities that were not possible 2 years ago or even 18 months ago. It's presenting opportunities with dollars that were unheard of or unthinkable before the pandemic. And it's incumbent upon us now to seize the moment, frankly, and to make sure that we fix this wrong for once and for all.
Thank you, Amy. And actually, you've kind of gone into my second question, so maybe we should continue there. Because my second question is, what challenges and opportunities do you see that we can, that can help to alleviate the digital divide? Do you want to go continue?
Sure.
You were heading down that path.
I can start there. In terms of opportunities, we're seeing massive amounts of funding that's being from the federal government, from the private sector, from donors, philanthropists, from states, and even local governments that we've not seen before. And those dollars matter in closing this, right? So this is an expensive problem. It's expensive to lay fiber in the mountains. It's expensive to get digital literacy training to everyone that needs it. It's expensive to get computers to folks. And so those dollars are important. But we're also seeing thoughtful policy. So we're seeing people understand that it's not just about the pipes and wires, that it is about what you all do so well, that it's about the human touch, right? It really matters to have a one-on-one connection with folks to make sure that they get from point A to point B to point C to get the skills that they need. And so those are really great opportunities that we're seeing right now. You know, the challenges are the normal challenges. There's politics involved. Anytime there's money involved, there's politics involved. There's egos, there's pride, there's my way's best, right? So they're the typical challenges. And then also, you know, this is a very, very big problem that's nationwide. And so it's going to take a lot of collaboration. And so that's a challenge, of course, but the opportunities are huge. And so I'm really excited to see what we can potentially do in the next 6 to 18 months to really close this thing.
Thank you. Coyle, do you have any thoughts on the challenges and opportunities?
Sure. So I think that, and just kind of piggybacking on what Amy mentioned, I think we have a tremendous opportunity to kind of build on some of the short-term fixes that have been put into place to address immediate needs and to think longer term, right? So with an issue as challenging as the digital divide and other inequities that we see across systems, we know that we need a long-term lens to kind of look through and approaches. And so the focus on equity really presents the opportunity across the board, I believe. And it also is an opportunity for us to think about how we do equity work, right? So in many ways, people think that racial equity is such an aspirational goal. Will we really get there? Will we see it in my lifetime, for example? But if we think about how we dissect the problem and how we can approach it potentially a little differently, just in terms of how we responded to the emergency. So if we take that same fortitude to think about how we might address equity in the digital space and other spaces, I think we can kind of get there. So what we've been thinking about is, how do we apply racial equity tools to various decisions that are being made? And so at every turn, asking, how are inequities and racism in particular operating here? Because we know racism and economic inequities are tied up into one another for historic reasons. And so examining the benefit and the burden and the communities that bear that burden, right, which by and large represent our Black, Latinx, Indigenous communities of color, and think about what it means. What does a potential decision mean prior to even making that decision? And then thinking about how we can mitigate any unintended consequences are really some of the thoughts behind how we do racial equity work. So I think that represents a tremendous opportunity for us. And it's something that could carry us forward, you know, in the more immediate term, but then also in the long term as well.
Okay, thank you. And Seth, do you have some thoughts to add on the opportunities and the challenges?
Well,
I know you've dealt with both.
I have, and I agree so much with what Quayla and Amy have said. I think what I would say, the human element is always both the opportunity and the concern. Because a lot of money and federal investment is coming down the pike, there's a lot of money that can lead to bad solutions. that do not systemically move the needle in any way. And so the thing that keeps me up at night is, well, we got to make damn sure we're talking to everybody who's getting money and making sure that our community is being transparent about how they're going to use their funds to move this systemically. And I think it's really important to say that the library can't solve this issue, but the library, the city, the county, the school district, hey, we might have a chance with the amount of funding that's coming in. And so how do you rapidly kind of be honest about that challenge and put your ego aside to have that tough conversation that if we're really going to move this, it's going to take the community moving forward. And I would just say too, I think Quayle's point is really good. I think we have to move into solution building from a co-designing standpoint. We need to not go into African American, Latinx, or indigenous communities with a solution. We need to go into those communities listening, because those communities know the challenges they're facing. And the way in which you engage those communities to solution is just as important, if not more important, than any funding, any program, any intervention that you can come up with. And so I think that's really the way we do this work is really important right now.
Thank you. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I'll do a little commercial break here in the middle and say that we're trying to do the same thing with Digital Durham, that what Seth is talking about. We do have a pretty good coalition. Actually, I'd say a very good coalition going on in Durham right now that is trying to work together to do this work for the city and county of Durham. But since I'm the moderator and I shouldn't be expressing my opinions, I will continue on and let my panelists talk. So let's start. We have limited time this morning, but let's talk about, and then we've already started, all three of you have already started with suggestions and solutions and things that we can do to address this issue. So would you continue with those ideas? You know, what your thoughts are, or what your organizations are actually doing at this point in time. So should Seth, since you were going down that path,
I'll go.
Leave you alone.
Well, I will try to describe like the libraries and the Digital Inclusion Alliance's kind of work in the past year. And I kind of wear these dual hats and they all kind of blur. So forgive me if it's not clear on the description, but in March of last year, when the pandemic hit in a real way, our libraries closed for the first time ever in recent history. And the number one concern I had was the communities that I knew depended on the library as their source for the internet and their source for technology. And how in the world were they going to navigate without that? I think in some ways the digital divide conversation has been elevated because the traditional safety net that we have known, such as the libraries and other access portals, were just cut at the knees. You can't open a library during the pandemic. So how in the world do you create a new normal that helps those challenges? And so my design question became, how do we continue to provide access and technology when our branches are closed? And I kind of, the way I coped was I worked really hard to figure out, okay, how do we actually start solving this thing? And so a lot of that has come from conversations that we've had in the Charlotte Digital Inclusion Alliance. And I'll be the first to admit, like, all these ideas did not come from me. They came from organic conversations. And I think that's the benefit of having a digital inclusion alliance like Digital Durham, is that you've got a community of like-minded individuals where this is a passion and the best ideas can start to come up. So I know that you guys have a strong coalition in Durham, and that's awesome. What came out of those conversations in our context was a refurbishment program where we were able to distribute over 2,000 free computers into the community that people got to keep. That was called the Mech project, and we're still working through that. So working with a refurbisher, putting in an open source operating system and all the software that you need, using CARES Act money in partnership with Mecklenburg County, we were able to rapidly stand that up and learn in real time how to do that. So that's definitely not the norm of what libraries do. True. And then we were also able to apply for a community networking project with IMLS, and we're working to build a community network in IMLS to prove a model that libraries can make strides in building networks and technological resources outside of the normal branch mode of doing.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
So we're running low on time, so let me just ask Quayle first and then Amy second for kind of your wrap up.
Yes, yes, so many great points this morning.
I know we get way too much good information for so little time.
Yes, yes. So in terms of, suggestions or solutions, I think that we just have a tremendous opportunity to kind of keep our foot on the gas and to ensure that we're lifting these issues up at every turn, right? So we know long term, our communities and the demographics of our communities are shifting. And so we need to be prepared to kind of address the needs that younger communities, more populated communities of color, what their needs might actually represent, right? So I think that's one sort of solution to kind of keep this lens going. And the work of Digital Durham and all of these collaboratives that exist across the country, I think are just so important. The other thing that I'll say is within the county, we've just been working in much smaller teams to try to figure out how to do this work. So in as much as we want to keep the conversation going, we have to figure out what solutions we can begin to apply and where we can actually intervene. And I think that the point about resources is really, really important. So we've seen our systems respond in novel ways and creative ways, and we want to keep that going. So we've been maintaining that energy and momentum in smaller core teams and different departments. We have our countywide racial equity team, and we are holding discussion, but we are also actively strategizing, right? And we're doing it in partnership with the community, because Seth's point is so well taken. So I think in terms of just the opportunities that exist for our community in terms of being prepared to achieve and propel the growth that we're anticipating seeing both in demographics and also economics is really, really important for us to consider to address the digital divide and to ensure that we're really achieving digital equity.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. And I think that's, we're all in this together. We'll work with you on it. Yeah. Amy?
Yeah,
Put the icing on the cake for me.
Yeah. So I'll just say, my advice or suggestions are to leverage the historic amount of funding that's coming, right? So to pay attention to what's going on. I'll drop a link into the chat to some new funding that's available to cities and counties in the state that can be used for digital inclusion. And if you have any questions about how that can be used, you can let me know and I can follow up. But so my advice is to leverage those funds and to leverage the federal work and the state work, but that really the future of this work and the solutions are local. Like the solutions for Durham are in Durham. And to the community coming together as a community, that is how you're going to solve the problem in Durham. And you already have a wonderful coalition. Digital Durham is like one of the leaders in the state in this work. They've created a plan, which is wonderful. You know, the next steps for that would be for the city and county to approve that plan, to go as far as creating a position within the community that can lead this work, right? So somebody who can take the charge and lead this and put some real oomph behind the work, and just, you know, embedding digital inclusion and digital equity into every part of the local government, every part of the community are some next steps. But again, I just want to emphasize that there's already wonderful ideas happening in Durham, and that this can be solved, right? So if the community comes together and works together and everyone does their part, it can be solved. And so that's I think the exciting opportunity in front of us, that this is possible to do this. So anyways, especially with partners like you. So thank you.
Okay, thank you all. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Lizzie. But thank you, panel. That was a great, I wish we had more time. That's all.
Thanks for having us.
Wonderful. Wow. That's exactly what I was excited to listen and learn from those experts. Thank you, Gwen. Thank you, Seth. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Quayle, for joining us today. It does feel like just the beginning of a conversation. So I am excited that we have some opportunities here in Durham working with Digital Durham, digitaldurham.net, of which I'm part of. So if you're interested in learning more, please reach out to me. I'd be very delighted to connect you. So thank you all. Now, before we move on, I would like to take another moment to give a shout out to our instructor level sponsors. First National Bank, Lulu Press, CT Wilson Construction, Mad Rock Advisors, Wyrick Robbins, and PNC Bank. Thank you all for your returning as sponsors again this year. Very, very much appreciated. So we want to stay on track with time, and we're so grateful for that wonderful panel, but we've got a couple more really wonderful things that I know you're going to enjoy this morning. So please, hopefully you can stick around. This also, this is recorded, so if you you may share it with anybody that you like. So I'm very, very pleased this morning to introduce and to present our Leaders in Literacy Award. The Durham Literacy Center established the Leaders in Literacy Award in 2008 to honor and amplify voices of individuals or groups who champion literacy. The first award was presented to Dr. John Hope Franklin for his advocacy as an ex officio member of the Durham Literacy Center board. Today, I'm excited to talk about Dr. Bart Ehrman. Bart Ehrman is the James A. Gray Distinguished Professor at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and a New York Times bestselling author 5 times over. He's an expert on the New Testament and the history of early Christianity, and has written and edited over 30 books, numerous scholarly articles, and dozens of book reviews. On top of his incredible scholarship and prolific writing, Bart is an extraordinary champion for literacy. He started his career in teaching at Rutgers University in New Jersey, and also volunteered there to teach English with the refugee resettlement program. Bart worked with a Cambodian father and was inspired by the man and his family's resiliency and the empowering impact that learning English had on the family. After moving to Durham to teach at UNC Chapel Hill, Bart found the Durham Literacy Center, and boy, are we lucky. His first donation came in 2006, and his gifts have grown over the last 15 years. His gifts have grown to become our largest individual donor and champion. One day in 2018, I got a call from Bart. "Hey, have you heard about my foundation?" he asked. I had, of course, and I knew that he gave to 4 highly impactful organizations, 2 international and 2 local. He said, "I'd like to add the DLC to the list of organizations that are supported by the foundation." Since then, Bart has given over $75,000 from the Bart Ehrman Foundation and well over $200,000 as an individual donor to the Durham Literacy Center. I'd like for you to join me in recognizing Dr. Bart Ehrman as we present. I can't see myself, actually. I'm there. I just cannot see. I'm sorry. I apologize. So we have today a special award for Bart Ehrman, my friend, and lucky in partnership in reaching our mission. So Bart, thank you so much. We will deliver this award to you maybe later today.
Okay, thanks, Leslie. This is it's great. I'm really deeply honored. I really appreciate it, and the work you do, as does everybody on this at this meeting. We're all grateful to the Durham Literacy Center. As the rest of you know, Lizzie has been providing outstanding leadership for the center, and Amy is a godsend. And so I just want to thank you and all of the staff and volunteers. So my wife Sarah and I are both major proponents and advocates of literacy because of basically because of our lives. We were both avid readers as children. Sarah in England and me here in Kansas, actually, and we've both been professors of humanities for over 30 years. Sarah teaches English at Duke. She's an expert in Shakespeare, and I teach at UNC and an expert in early Christianity, the New Testament and the history of early Christianity, and so our lives are spent with literacy. We teach important books, and we read all the time, and we write books, and so literacy is hugely important to us. My scholarship is actually deals with literacy in the ancient world. My focus is on the New Testament and early Christianity, and one thing most people don't realize is that Christianity was the first religion really to emphasize books, literacy, as a guide for what one ought to believe and how one ought to live. Judaism, of course, was the predecessor with the Hebrew Bible, and for the Hebrew Bible always has been extremely important for Judaism. Christianity took over that emphasis and expanded it so that the new Christians came to believe that they actually had God's words on the page that was to direct how they lived and what they believed. So literacy became very important in early Christianity, but the strange thing is that in the ancient world, most people could not read. This is another thing most people don't realize, is that in Greek and Roman antiquity, maybe 10 or 15% of the population could read, and far fewer of that could write, because they taught reading and writing at different stages of the educational curriculum, and very few people got educated. In Israel, in the days of Jesus, probably 3 to 4% of the population could read. And so that makes for an interesting phenomenon, that you have Christianity come along as a literate religion based on books that very few people could read. And it raises all sorts of questions that historians have to deal with. Could Jesus read and write? Could he? He grew up in a small little village that didn't have a school. It's an interesting question about his disciples, and who did write these early Christian books, and who was reading them, and how are they distributing them, and how can you have a religion based on books when people can't read? And so it's a very, very interesting set of historical questions. But what emerges out of that is the realization that broad literacy, massive literacy, doesn't come into the world until the Industrial Revolution. Mass literacy is really expensive, as we all know, and governments were not interested in investing in it because there was no reason to invest in it before the Industrial Revolution. With the Industrial Revolution, literacy became hugely important, and so governments started investing huge sums of money in it. But that also created a kind of social and economic divide. There was always a social economic divide. In the ancient world, the divide was very few people were very rich and everybody else was dirt poor. And so, but a middle class got created, and now we have our different forms of stratification. But it means that in our society today, of course, there are a lot of people who are left behind. And the people who have not been able to take advantage of the massive literacy that is available to other people, which creates, of course, huge economic distress and social and cultural stratifications that are not good. And as we've been hearing in our country especially, that this also has a very strong racial component. This is why Sarah and I have supported the Durham Literacy Center so strongly, because we really believe in its mission. And it's why I devote a lot of my energy toward literacy on my blog. Lizzie mentioned that I've got this blog. It's a blog that anybody can join. It deals with the New Testament and early Christianity from a non-sectarian historical perspective. and it tries to educate people about what we can know about earliest Christianity and the historical Jesus on up to the Emperor Constantine. I charge a small membership for people to join, and the membership fee, none of it goes to overhead. All of it goes to charities. And as Lizzie mentioned, now for the last couple of years, the Literacy Center has been one of the charities that we support. And thankfully, the blog is growing significantly, so we're able to support even more and more. And so that is a major component of my life, is raising funds for charities such as the Durham Literacy Center. Let me just conclude by saying I'm deeply honored to receive this award. What I do, donating money, is completely minor compared to what the people at the Durham Literacy Center do. The staff, the volunteers do a great job, and we are all really grateful for them, and that's why we all are so dedicated to supporting them. So Lizzie, thank you very much for this award.
Thank
Bart,
you.
thank you very, very much. And I want to introduce Amy Bogey, now our Director of Development.
Thank you so much, Bart. And we've heard so much about our programs today, and we wanted to give you an opportunity to hear from some of our students and what it's been like for them this year learning online.
Was a terrible situation here in United States. We're living only my husband and me, and we took all the precautions. But my family in Brazil, they are all there, my family and my friends, and the situation is so difficult all around the world, but nowadays in Brazil especially.
It slows a lot of things down. We don't get around as good as we used to, so had to slow down to get around to continue. But other than that, we've been doing pretty well. Just staying at home and staying safe.
And, you know, like I said, my uncle had passed the first of this year. So that kind of affected the funeral, you know, as far as like, you know, is it going to be inside, outside, you know, stuff like that. But, you know, we usually much be, you know, at home anyway, but it has affected, you know, certain things like, you know, going to the stores and, you know, stuff like that, having to wear masks. But, you know, I still keep mine on. I don't care what they saying, you know, whether we can have it on, have it off. I'm not even risking myself or my family's life. So
now I guess we are a little better here, but I'm continue praying for all around the world, other countries, Brazil and India, because the situation is so complicated there too. But I have hope to this thing will be stay good, stay well.
It's important to me because I made it important to me. You know, it's just that I never knew how to read, and learning to read was giving me new boundaries to hope for better things to happen for me. And I didn't want to lose that, so I kept up the activity of, you know, staying in school with my teacher over the internet.
it's important to me because I'm just sitting around in the house not doing much anyway, you know, besides cleaning up. So I'm like, you know, why not do something wisely with my time, you know, because I was supposed to graduate back in 2018, but, you know, I had a lot of different other stuff going on. So during the pandemic, I'm like, you know, why just, you know, not, you know, do something, why not sit in the house and do something productive? It's been great. Like everything that, you know, you guys have done for me, it's been awesome. Like getting the computer and having the tutors and even having, you know, Miss Courtney. She was, you know, fun to talk to. She gave us a lot of helpful tips and stuff like that. So, you know, being in this program has really helped me a lot. I like how I'm able to communicate with you guys and y'all understand that, you know, people have real lives outside of this program.
Oh, it's it's very important because even with the pandemic, DLC enabled us to continue our studies in our daily virtual meetings. And most of the friendship I have here in North Carolina were made through the DLC. So for me, it was amazing to still have contact with the people, with these colleagues, and the tutors was amazing because it's not easy to keep all the students together and paying attention, and they can do that. So was different. I never do that online classes, but was an amazing experience. Was so important for us to stay in our mind, oh, we'll be okay, we'll be fine. We are all here in different situations, but we are all here. And it's very important for me. My health, mental health was incredible, was amazing.
Yeah, I use the computer every day. Like, I use my phone to reply to the Hangouts message, and that's about it. But like for my work, you know, and all that other stuff, I use the computer every day because it's easier to use the computer, and I can't access essential education or, you know, the other websites without being on the computer, because being on the phone, I can't do it like that because it's not up to date with the computer and other stuff that I use. I'm definitely more comfortable with using the computer. You know, it's easy to access, you know, it's not, you know, nothing hard. You know, you just get on the computer, open it up, you know, do what I got to do, and that's it.
Yes, ma'am, I'm still a little scared of it, but this pandemic that we had sort of made me go into it because I knew I had no other choice because I couldn't communicate no other way. So I had to learn how to cut the computer on, how to get in touch with my teacher and go through the things to learn more.
From 1 year from now, I just want to be able to be financially stable, you know, being in my own apartment, and hopefully finding a career that I enjoy doing. So basically to just be happy in life, having a good career, being financially stable, and, you know, not only just getting there but staying there.
I'm hoping this pandemic is over and we all around the world get vaccine and we can meet people, we can stay together, we can hug people. I guess this is more important because we can do that now. So I want to hug people, the tutors, my colleagues, my family. So that's my hope. And who knows, planning a baby and stay together, I guess, is the more important. Not virtually, but physically stay together, I guess, is my hope for the next year.
I want to be one of the greatest readers you ever read into.
Well, you guys have already helped me, like I said, by giving me the computer, you know, so easy to access, and it's a very nice computer as well. And you know, just by you guys being there, if I need somebody to talk to, you know, or, you know, something like that.
Well, they've been helping me all the while. I've been here for about a little over a few years, and when I came here, I didn't know how to read nothing. Now, you know, I can go down the street and I know the men's bathroom at anyway, you know. So it's a good thing for me, okay? Linda, I think she's one of the greatest things that ever happened to me because I have learned so much through her, by her teaching me how to read and understand things. I thought I knew everything, but I didn't. I didn't know how to read. And being with Linda has taught me, I mean, I appreciate things a lot more than I used to because I see it before me.
For me, DLC is not only a place that teaches me to improve my English skills, but also teaches me a lot about diversity, culture, respect, and empathy, because we are with people of all around the world, DLC gave me this opportunity to meet people from all around the world. And it's amazing because now we are friends. We're speaking in WhatsApp and Facebook and Instagram. We share our lives. And this is, I'm so thankful for DLC give me this.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much to everyone for joining us this morning. If you haven't already, please do visit our website at durhamliteracy.org/donate. If you're able to support our work monetarily, it helps us prepare to serve more students in the post-pandemic world, as well as expanding our digital literacy and technology lending library programs, as Lizzie mentioned earlier. There are other ways as well that you can support our work non-monetarily if that's not right for you. We are a finalist for a grant from Durham's participatory budgeting program right now, and you can vote online now through June 6th. We are under the community and economic development category. So please vote if you're a Durham resident. All Durham residents ages 13 and up are eligible to vote. You can also become a volunteer. You heard here today some of the ways that our volunteer tutors have made such an impact for students in our programs. We will need more volunteers to teach both in person and online in the fall as we transition to hybrid programming and reopen our facilities, hopefully in fall 2021. And please do stay connected with us on social media and online. There are opportunities to engage with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, as well as via email and on our website. And I wanted to say before we close, a quick thank you to our staff and board who have really gone above and beyond to support our students this year. We could not have done it without you. It's been a really difficult year for everyone, I know, but they've made it possible for our students to keep learning throughout the pandemic. Thank you so much for being here today and for spending your time with us this morning. We can't wait to be back in person with you, hopefully next year. Have a great day.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy your day. Thank you for everyone.